Going live.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Actually, hang on.
My name is...
It's just having a moment, I think. We're live. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, we're live. Okay, hi. So, hi. For real this time, hi. My name is Steph. Welcome to this lovely chat. Bridgerton on a budget. Which is really just a great excuse for us to talk about fancy dress things. But yeah, today we're going to talk about doing a historical costume on a budget with not a, BFA level of skill, and how to make it work and still have fun and be enjoyable. Are you here?
I'm ready. Yep, I'm ready. I've done clicking buttons.
And this is Marissa.
I missed everything you just said because I was clicking buttons.
Okay, that's fine.
So
hi. So this is Marissa.
Hi.
Who also does lots of costuming things. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Marissa. So I'm the owner of Whimsy and Fluff with my sister Betsy. I make bloomers and skirts and things out of vintage sheets and tablecloths and stuff like that. And then my sister does embroidery with my scraps. Check us out, whimsyandfluff.com. I'm also a freelance costume designer. And period costumes in particular are my favorite to do. So here we are with some Bridgerton costume talk.
Yeah. And I said my name and welcome, but I also
okay, sorry.
I'm also a costumer.
Jump the gun.
And I own the Sea Raven, which I generally make accessories for that, like leather masks and other fancy stuff. But we come from very different costuming backgrounds. Marissa comes from the kind of private runway, make it work. I have all this natural talent. Ugh. And then I come from the background of I went to school for theater and sat in the shop with historic patterns and was told sew these together and they have to be right. So we've taken that and kind of meshed those lifestyles together. And I think we've made some pretty good stuff happen in the past.
We have.
We've got knowledge that will with the masses.
Yeah. I mean, I'm all about make it, like Steph said, make it work. I'm all about making it work. I have no formal training. My mom taught me how to use a sewing machine, but I'm mostly self-taught. So I am all about how it doesn't. I mean, for what I do, it doesn't have to be 100% historically accurate. You're doing it to have fun. You're not doing it to. It's not going in a museum.
Yeah, and depending on the genre too, you're doing this to have fun. You're not doing this to sit in your house and say, "Look at my pad stitching." You're doing this to go to an event, to get dressed up, and to have a lot of fun, or to dress up your friends so that they can have a lot of fun. And there's such a big gap between the meticulous, historical, accurate patterns and sewing and all that kind of stuff for reenactment purposes or stage or film purposes, and then there's make it work, throwing it together. One of them is definitely going to get you an A on the project. One of them is definitely not, but you are going to have the same amount of fun at whatever thing you're going to. You know what I mean? So why feel intimidated by I can't go to the Jane Austen ball that's happening up the street from me because I don't know how to make an 1813 jumper. Don't let that be a thought in your mind ever.
Right.
So here we are.
Yeah.
And what a great place to start now that Bridgerton is the only show I ever see people talking about.
Yeah. There's a lot of interest right now in Bridgerton costumes and how to get that look. So we're here for you.
A lot of friends on Facebook who are really young, who are not sewers or costume people or anything like that, who are oh, this is for me. This is the thing I want to cosplay as. And where do I start?
Hi, Heather. Heather just said hello in the comments.
Hey.
Just FYI, our video, there's a 20-second lag between what we say and when you actually see it. So if you type us a comment, we'll see it, but you won't hear from us for another 20 seconds. Just FYI.
Also, Marissa will see it.
Right. Step one. I'll try to pass it on.
I have tiny little thumbnails in the corner of the screen. And that's it. So, So yeah, let's share our thoughts on like just before we even get into like the sewing of things. Like, let's talk about what the hell Bridgerton is. If you've been living under a rock and you have not yet seen Bridgerton, here you go.
Oh, that's me.
Take it away.
Oh, okay.
Sure. Why not?
So Bridgerton is a show on Netflix. It is a, I don't want to say fantastical look at Regency era, but it is an anachronistic look at Regency era. So in terms of the costumes, they're not 100% accurate. The costume designers definitely took a lot of liberties in terms of accuracy, which for cosplay purposes is amazing. But the show itself, if you don't have any context, it's actually a series of 8 books that they have adapted into a series. Each season focuses on a different child in the Bridgerton family. The first season was Daphne, and I have already forgotten the Duke's name.
He's the Duke.
He's the Duke.
That's all you need to know.
Right. And so that's where we are now.
Yep, that's pretty much it. And it's great in a lot of ways. Again, with that like artistic interpretation of historical costumes. So if you study this stuff, and also like, you know, there's been a pool of people who are absolutely in love with everything Jane Austen. You know, how many versions of Pride and Prejudice are there for you to readily watch that are so extremely historically accurate? But that kind of artistic license, having gone in and played with it a little bit, makes it so much more accessible to people. It makes it just so pretty. It's just, we live in such a dystopian nightmare right now. Isn't it nice to have something pretty to just immerse yourself in for an hour at a time? You know what I mean? And not only is it all this kind of stuff, but I saw a costume breakdown from Pinsent Tailoring, who I follow, who is amazing. He breaks down things in a very lovely and gentle manner. But he was talking about at the end of all his, like, let me pick apart the historical inaccuracies of this. But at the end of the day, it's fantasy.
Right.
It's a piece of historical fiction. It's meant to be like this romance fairy tale. So why not make it pretty and fun and interesting, and you know, something that people today can connect with. Nobody today cares what your arms are shaped like. They just want to look nice in a pretty flowy gown. So it's easy, especially with the casting. Like, oh, thank you for finally making the casting beautiful and diverse and all kinds of things. So like that in itself is worth the watch.
Yeah.
Thank you, Netflix.
Right.
And Sean Burns. You know. But there's that. So the costuming, definitely not the pinnacle of historical accuracy, but I think the fact that it's more accessible to people makes it better.
Right. So let's look at what is and isn't historically accurate really quick. To talk about that really quickly, should we?
Cool.
Well, more for reference purposes, I think.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at Regency era, which is what that time period is referred to in terms of costume, it's Regency. It's early 1800s.
And it's a very short amount.
It's very
years.
Specific. It's like the first decade of the
1811 to 1820 or something.
Right.
It's less than a decade.
But it's so popular. So the defining characteristic of the Regency dress is that super high waist, like barely
Empire
under the
waist.
bust waistline.
Empire waistline. I can hear myself.
I don't know why that is.
Sorry, everyone. Sorry. Okay, what am I? So yeah, Empire waistline. It's a much more. I saw this other video the other day talking about like everything historical is just like Victorian to a lot of people.
Oh,
that flabbergasted me so hard. I was like, why with all of this like Austen fever out in the world does that still exist and you don't want a Regency? But it's so different from like Victorian or, you know, especially when you see stuff like steampunk and corsets everywhere. They had corselettes, which was like basically just a fancy bra.
Right.
That let the dress drape over you so you didn't have to worry about, you know, like hoisting yourself into it. But the silhouette is much more comfortable and flowy, and it was kind of this weird, like, relaxed atmosphere for a minute. Like, you shook off all of the, like, rococo, you know, tiny waist and giant hoop skirts, and then you go into this very simple skirt, very, like, high waistline. You don't have to worry about, like, not eating your dinner because then your dress won't fit anymore.
Okay, since you mentioned the corsets, I just want to bring up the one issue I had with the costumes in Bridgerton, which
I
was
think it's the same one I have.
the
So go
corsets.
first. I'll tell you.
So, one, they were not the right corsets.
No.
Two,
Obviously.
they put those women, I mean, first of all, they didn't tight lace. Like, there was none of that, like what you associate with Victorian and that, like, brace yourself while, you pull on the,
Yeah.
they didn't do that in Regency era. But
I want
also,
to talk about one. Oh, keep going.
Go ahead. Nope, do it.
Okay, so I want to talk about one. This is not a spoiler. It is like one of the first scenes of action that you see in the very first episode. Is one of the one of the silly girls, as I affectionately refer to them as. I love
The
that.
Featheringtons?
Yeah,
Okay.
getting like tight laced into a corset, and she's like gripping the bed, and she can't breathe. And the mom is like, "Listen, when I was your age, I had a 10-inch waist," or something like that. So it serves a couple purposes for like character development. It's really cool because the mom gets to have that like, I used to walk uphill 10 miles in the snow to go to school moment, which I think is great. It's so great to set up, exactly who that mom is, exactly where she's going with it. You're like, okay, these are these people. Love it, and I'm there for it, and they're going to be entertaining the whole time. But yeah, totally not the proper attitude about corsets and not the proper silhouette at all.
At all.
That's fine.
And they didn't wear chemises underneath their corsets. Like, there was no barrier between the corset and the body, which is, you don't do that. Like, you don't do that. I always take issue when shows misrepresent corsetry.
It's bad. Well, because then it gets a bad rap.
Exactly.
It's unhealthy and da-da-da. It's only unhealthy if you don't know what you're doing,
right.
Which can be said about pretty much everything in life.
Right. So, okay, sorry. That was my soapbox. I'm stepping off of it. We can continue.
I love it. What were we talking about before soapbox?
Well, we were talking about the silhouette of Regency era, which is
perfect.
Which is why, like, it's one of my favorite eras to wear because it's comfy.
It's comfy. It's flowy. It's like, romantic.
It's Right. Exactly. So
that's that.
So that's that. So some of the liberties that Bridgerton took in terms of the costumes, I want to say the colors, but even that I think is we assume that colors of Regency period clothing were muted, but I think that colors were brighter than we think they were. It's more the sparkle that we saw in Bridgerton that was the anachronism. There were so many rhinestones and beads and glitter. There was so much sparkle in Bridgerton.
Oh yeah, but I mean, give me all the sparkle. But mostly, I mean, they contain most of the sparkle to evening wear, which is appropriate. Yeah. Also, yeah, we think of it as all these muted, washed out tones, but like, it's the first time that I think, unless I'm forgetting a show, that like you see men of that era who are not full like plain dark like Beau Brummel-ish colors. Like, men got to wear colorful clothing without being foppish or anything like that, and this is a really great example of that. They're kind of weird about like, when do I wear breeches and when do I wear pants? Well, that's okay. We don't have to hate them for that. Also, the one thing, more than the sparkle with the women, which I think is actually great for cosplay and dress up.
Yeah, we're going to talk about this over here in a second. Is what the hair.
The hair. So normally it would be not all this like flamboyant, fabulous braids and puffs and hairstyles and stuff like that. It would be under a bonnet in the daytime. It would be, braided and pinned up and stuff at night. It would not be loose and flowy and all kinds of stuff. But I think, again, it just makes it really pretty and more accessible and really comfy. If you want to go out for the day dressed as anyone from that show, it's so much easier to not have to worry about like Regency hair.
Right.
Just
so
leave it behind.
So I just also want to bring up one quick thing. The Queen, who was in a completely different era of dress, which I initially was like, that's an interesting choice that they did that. However, I read an article that talked about the fact that there's a school of thought that she actually did that. As fashion progressed, she kept herself and her court in the style of the previous fashion era. maybe
And that
because
was
she
a
liked
thing.
it.
That was definitely like court dress being
Right.
this very very regal and very, if it's made of gold and stuff,
Right.
you're not gonna.
Those costumes were my
First
favorite of the entire show. Ooh, I
Yeah.
loved the Queen's Court in those costumes. Ooh, I loved him a lot.
Wait a minute. Are we still talking about the Queen?
Yeah.
Yeah, my favorite historical period ever at all is Rococo.
Yeah.
Because I love all the really fancy nonsense. So it made me really happy to see that the, throwback court dress in this instance, they were like, well, we're just going to throw it back to something really fabulous.
Right.
Why would we not do that?
Right. I love it. So that's Bridgerton. That's what the costumes were. That's why they're fantastic for cosplay right now. So let's talk about some specifics on how you can do that. Let's do it. Let's get into it.
So let's talk about, I think, first of all, we should talk about accessibility for, like, if you were a non-sewer.
Yep. All right, I got you. So here we go. If you're a non-sewer, I'm just going to slide this forward. Give me one.
Not even beginner level.
No, this is not even, this is like I don't own a sewing machine.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm actually going to tip my camera forward just a little bit so you can see the bottom of this. Okay, so this dress here, I went to Savers this morning and bought this black dress. You can't see it on the camera, but up close, it's got, it's all shimmery. Like the whole thing is sparkling, which just screams Bridgerton. So it cuts off about mid-calf, so I just put a skirt underneath it. Because, you know what? That's how we make it full length. And that was a look of the period. They would wear, an underdress and then an overdress, as I am right now.
Very much so. And like adding ruffles on the bottom and all kinds of stuff.
And if you want to get creative with it, you can, fabric glue is your friend. You can glue things along here. And then all I did to create that super high empire waist was take a piece of ribbon and tie it under the bust. It's safety pinned right here, and I just added a little bit of embellishment, but that's it. There you go. There's your Regency silhouette. And then if you do have, you don't even need to be able to sew, but if you can make flowers, or if you just have sequins or pins or anything like that you want to attach, bust out your glue gun and just like start putting things along the collar or under the bust or at the bottom.
You can embellish this any way you want.
Right.
You want to add pearls, you want to add flowers, you want to add little pieces of embroidery.
And then
go to town.
And then accessorize. Accessorize. We were saying earlier, our motto when it comes to steampunk costumes is put a gear on it. My motto now when it comes to Bridgerton cosplay is put a choker on. They love a good choker in Bridgerton. So that's what I did. I put a choker on, and it's immediately evocative of that era.
Immediately.
Right.
I love it. Yeah, I have the cameo on, but not to be underdone. I needed like a tight thing, so I just put on pearls.
Right.
Also, get 15 strands of the cheapest pearls you could find, and you're gonna look like $1 million. You know what I mean? Just layer that stuff up.
So there you go. That's an easy no-sew. I think this dress cost $6. I had the skirt here. The ribbon was like $3. So this is a $10 no-sew Bridgerton look.
And all you need to go out and look for is a long dress,
right?
Ankle length, calf length with a skirt underneath it, whatever you want.
Yep.
That is like short sleeved and doesn't have a waist.
Right. So here's the thing about that. I actually struggled to find one that didn't have a waist. I ultimately, obviously, you see, I did find one that didn't have a waist seam. But if all you can find are dresses that have a waist seam, just take that seam, hitch it up to under your bust, and pin it. You're going to put a ribbon over it anyway. Just change where it falls and use safety pins.
Safety pins are your friend. If you can, thread a needle. Just like run a big slap of the running stick right through it.
And then cover it with a nice fat ribbon.
Yeah.
And boom. Instant Regency.
Yeah. You don't need a belt. You don't need a corset. You don't need any kind of fanciness. Tie that ribbon in a bow and walk out the door.
And actually, it creates this very lovely, because, so fun fact, I use hem tape for my choker.
Oh. Hem tape is your friend.
Because it's lacy, but it's durable. So anyway, but so we end up with this really beautiful like draping of ribbon along the back, which I love. It's so pretty.
It's so pretty. I love it. Also, there's a difference between, I'm going to mention real quick. You just said hem tape, and it made me think of the iron-on, like, stitch witchery type of thing.
Oh, yeah, no, it's
Different.
not that.
No, like, you're talking about, like, bias tape.
Bias tape, yeah, sorry, bias tape.
Yeah, no, that's fine, because it goes by both, but hem tape that is, like, the iron-on kind, stitch witchery, or fusible interfacing or whatever, is also your friend in that if you find a dress that is just too long for you, nothing is stopping you from just cutting it with a pair of scissors and being done, first of all. But you can I know, I said
I'm such a lazy seamstress. Like, I'm such a lazy seamstress.
I know. It's the worst, and I love you. And you can just, like, literally fold it up. If you have an iron, you can glue that hem up. You can hot glue it. I do not condone it.
Listen, I use this like my life depends on it.
Yeah, Fabri-Tac is your friend.
Fabri-Tac is your friend if you don't know how to sew.
Be careful, though. There is no undoing the Fabri-Tac.
No.
That's the only clause about that.
Yeah.
Right. That's some really great no-sew, no-stress techniques.
Yeah.
Super cheap, quick, and easy. Now let's get into, if you have a basic knowledge of sewing, if you can sew rectangles and do a straight stitch on your sewing machine. You can hand sew, but, like, God, who has that time?
This is awful.
Let's talk about some rectangle goodness. Can I talk about my underdress?
Yeah, do it.
All right. That's great. All right. I'm going.
Dress
I can't stop. Okay. Also, I will say, everything that I made for today, this is a shirt that I already happen to own. This is just, really old-timey and fabulous. And it makes a good underlayer. So I'm thinking of it that way. But everything's made out of sheets. Old bed sheets. I know, that's your jam.
I'm a queen of sheets. Honestly, my whole outfit is made out of sheets.
It's so amazing, though. So this was a twin fitted sheet that I just, like, cut the corners so that it could lay flat. And then I just cut the, like, two end rectangles off and made the center square a big rectangle. Sewed the sides together. And it's a big tube. It's a big tube with an elastic in the top. So I just folded the top over like an inch and put a piece of elastic in there. Hindsight, the wide flat elastic is definitely better for this instance, which I did not have, but I didn't want to go out and get. I was like, use what you got. Use what's in the drawer. This is how you...
By wide flat elastic, she means something like this.
Yes. Thank you.
As opposed...
I have also, like, cut the waistband out of things like leggings and
right.
Underwear before.
So this is probably the kind of elastic you use. It's like what's on the earpieces of masks right now. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's just not as... It doesn't hold up... Like, physically, it doesn't hold garments up as well as, like, this stuff does.
Like, as you were just holding it up, it kind of was twisting around and kind of, like, looping up. And that's not going to help you hold it up. This is going to have other things holding it up, so I'm just going to go with it. I don't need to take it out later. But it's just a rectangle. Does not have a top part. If you will notice, it is just a skirt. And I'm either going to pull it up to here, or if I really need to...
Get those pearls out of the way.
Listen, I got things to do. Or if I really need to, I can pull it up to here. And then whatever I put over it, you will never see that it's literally just a muumuu. Also, let's talk about pockets for a moment. Everything needs pockets. That's just our way of life nowadays. I think, though, that with this silhouette, it's really hard to... And pockets are fine. You can put, like, a little rectangle on top of something. You don't even have to, like, inset it. You can just, like, stitch a rectangle on and go. However, in this silhouette, that pocket either needs to be, like, right here, or it's going to be, like, flopping around.
It's going to weigh the whole thing down.
Pocket, it's going to weigh the whole thing down. So, for this, in the side seam, I... kind of reinforced at the top and bottom along the seam, just this little hole that I can reach in, and I have under this a pair of leggings with pockets in it. So I have access to a pocket, which is actually how they did historical garments. You would, in the process of all the layers getting dressed, you would have your chemise and your corset, and then you would have a skirt, and then you would, over that, tie on this little belt that had a giant hanging pocket. And then when your overskirt went on, it would have a hole in the side seam for you to be able to just go under your skirt and reach that pocket. So ladies have always known the importance of having a pocket.
Pockets,
and
man.
Now I have easy access. Boom. And it's a rectangle. It does not get more simple.
Boom.
Boom. All right. That's my underdress.
Okay. I'm going to talk about my underdress.
Perfect.
I'm already wearing my underdress. I don't feel like taking my layers off, so I'm just going to tell you how I made mine.
Mm-hmm.
So I always use vintage sheets. What I'm wearing right now is about 2 sheets worth of sheets. So we're talking like an $8 investment in fabric, as opposed to going to the fabric store and buying, 4 to 6 yards of fabric is going to cost, I don't even know. It's stupid expensive.
You can maybe find it on sale for $5 a yard.
Right.
And even then, it's not going to be like the most glamorous fabric at all.
So I like to use the existing top edge of a sheet because that's one less thing that you have to sew.
It's a ready-made hem.
Right. So you take it and fold it in half. So the top seam is here. I already have this cut, but then what you want to do is cut it to the length that you need it. You can measure. As I said, I'm a lazy seamstress, so I eyeball it. I usually get it close enough to write. Just always remember, you can take off, you cannot add back on. I mean,
exactly.
You can. That's not true. You can, but it won't look as good.
Also, measure twice, cut once. You don't have to measure yourself necessarily if you want to eyeball it. Like, you do you know your size, but
right.
Please make sure that as you're cutting that line, you have measured and you know it's a straight line.
Yes.
Because if it's not, it will come back to
And I will say, I don't measure things like this now because I know how the fabric's going to drape once it's in pieces. Like, I know how to do that. If you've never done this before, then yeah, probably for what we're doing here, start at the shoulder, go all the way down to however long you want it. In this case, it's floor length. And that's how long you need this rectangle of fabric to be. So
and if you have a lady that can do that for you so that you don't have to bend. Because if you're measuring yourself, as you bend, that length is now much shorter.
Right.
So you either have to like kind of step on the tape and then pull it up, or just have a friend look at it.
Yeah. So you've got your folded sheet. You're going to cut along the fold, which I have already done also. So now you have 2 big rectangles of fabric. The part that I'm holding here, which is the existing top part of the sheet, is going to be the bottom of my underdress. So I'm actually going to take this and turn it around. So now I have this top part, which is where I cut it for the length. And I'm going to fold it in half again. Now, because this is a cheat dress, I'm going to be using elastic for the bust line, and I'm going to be using a drawstring at the neck. So I'm not measuring anything now. This is all just eyeballing. Eyeballing. Oh, I love eyeballing. Steph hates it, but I love it.
We got some good eyeballs. No, eyeball. I eyeball.
Yeah, I eyeball. So here, this is where I folded it over. So I've got my 2 pieces folded in half. This side where the fold is represents where my neckline's going to be. So I'm just going to cut out a U shape. This is your neckline. We're going to go to the other side. I'm actually going to turn it over because I'm right-handed.
Yeah.
And now this side is going to be my armpit. Same thing. I'm going to cut a slightly smaller U here. Ooh, there is way too much fabric left.
Yeah.
So I know that now. I can either, I'm actually going to make this armhole a little bit bigger. Because I will be honest, the cheat underdress that I'm wearing now, I also put elastic in the armholes. Because I had made them too big and I needed to take them in a little bit. So I added elastic.
Definitely make your neck wider.
So what I'm going to do, exactly. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to make this neckline wider. Now, I'm being horribly inexact about all of this, but that's the beauty of the cheat dress. It's killing
That
Steph.
sheet
It's
is so
killing her.
pretty. That sheet is so pretty. No,
Okay,
it's
so
fine.
now what we have are two pieces of fabric that look like this. I'm not gonna stitch it right now because we'll be here forever. But all you do, you want to make sure you turn it inside out so that inside piece and inside piece are not inside piece. Inside. What am I trying to say?
Are you trying to
The
say
right
that
side of the fabric is on the inside. Why was that such a struggle for me?
That's fine. I was trying.
So
We're all getting there.
So in any event, just remember that whatever side your stitches are on is the inside of your dress.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got this lovely piece of fabric here. You're going to put a stitch here, right here, and you're going to put another stitch here. You're going to put one shoulder to shoulder, another one shoulder to shoulder, and that will give you this giant loose hanging rectangular dress. And then all you have to do is fold this edge over here and run a stitch all the way along the entire neckline, leaving just an inch opening, because then you're going to thread a drawstring into it. Excuse me.
Yeah.
It's very easy.
It's so easy. You don't have to be, like, for that portion of it, you technically don't have to know how to use a sewing machine. Yep. You can hand stitch that if you...
use Fabri-Tac, use Stitch Witchery. Like, yep. You know what I mean? You don't have to take a sewing machine to this if you don't have one.
Yeah, it's going to be fine. As long as it is wearable at the end.
Right.
It's really okay. Pretty stitches on the inside are nice because you know they're there.
Right.
But they're not going to impact your outfit, you know what I mean?
And then for the dress that I'm wearing, one last thing I did put an elastic in just under the bust so that it would hang nicely even with no overdress on it. Putting an elastic in, there are a couple of ways you can do it. The easiest one is to... It's kind of hard to explain, actually. Your best bet is to go on YouTube and just, like, you know, find a video that shows you how to put, how to stretch an elastic into things. Do I have anything? No.
Can I explain?
Yes, do it.
So, the easiest and quickest thing to do in that case is, and you can do this on the outside or the inside, find a nice piece of wide, or like an inch wide piece of ribbon that is a color that you like. And if it's a color you don't like, it goes on the inside. And you just run it, you sew on both sides, and then that's your channel for an elastic. Like, you top stitch it to that line, make sure it's a straight line that goes all the way across, and then once you thread your elastic through that...
So I will say that when making the underdress I have on right now, the one time I measured was to figure out where to put that elastic. So I measured from here to here, basically, to see where that elastic needed to go. And then I took a piece of chalk and a ruler, and I drew a line straight across the dress, so I knew exactly where that elastic was going. Because that is the one thing, if the elastic gets wonky, it throws off the entire dress. It's all terrible.
It's and, like, if it's a little higher or a little lower than it really needs to be to hit you right at that underbust, that's okay. It's an underdress. Or, if it's not, you can just put a nice little wide ribbon on top of it, and it'll melt into whatever it needs to. But if it's crooked, if it's uneven, higher on one side, that's where it's going to not fit you properly and not hang off your body well.
And so the other option, if you're not comfortable with the elastic, because that is the one area of the dress I think you cannot get away with not sewing is putting the elastic in. Because even if you do the ribbon to create a channel, I don't recommend using Stitch Witchery or Fabri-Tac or anything like that for it, because you need to make sure you leave enough room to get something in there to run through for the elastic. But then your other option is to just take a ribbon and tie it around underneath your bust and call it a day. So that's that. So that's like, I have a sewing machine that I have never used level of skill for making the underdress. And then the overdress is also very beginner level. It's not, you know, you need to have some kind of understanding of how garments come together, but I'm going to show you the pattern I used to make my overdress. Simplicity, it's called Simplicity for a reason. Their patterns are incredibly easy to read and easy to use.
Yeah, if you're trying to figure out how to use a sewing pattern, don't start with Vogue typical.
Right.
Start with Simplicity.
Start with
Do
Simplicity.
yourself a favor. Because, I mean, really, that pattern, if you just use a really pretty fabric,
Right.
it's going to be just as impressive.
Right. And the nice thing about Simplicity is Joann Fabrics has sales on Simplicity fabric a lot. This pattern cost me $5. So just pay attention to that if you are looking to get into sewing and you're looking for a place to start. Pay attention to those pattern sales at Joann's. When I see that Joann's is having a $5 Simplicity pattern sale, I just go and just like I walk out of there with just armfuls of patterns because you know that's the way to do it.
I will often get patterns, and if they're on sale or if it's like buy one get one, or if I have a coupon, like I will just get the same pattern in. I'll either get a couple of copies of it or I'll get it in every size that it comes in.
Yes.
And then that way I'm covered. Like if I want to make this for somebody else,
yep.
if I change size, you know what I mean? If I cut into it and I mess up and I want to have it again and I don't want to take the time to trace them. I used to have to trace every pattern. For my training, I was never allowed to cut into a pattern. I had to lay it out and then trace the size that I had to cut. And that was my new pattern. And for that tracing, regular tracing paper doesn't work because it doesn't come in big enough sheets. So the costume shop would buy the roll of
newsprint.
No, not even the paper that they use in doctor's office to like.
Oh God.
Yeah, it's the perfect tracing paper. You get it from a medical supply place. I found it on Amazon. I don't remember how much it cost, but it was not expensive. And when I got it myself, that's great. It's also good for if you are. I'm going to totally interrupt and derail you. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm done. That was it. Go for it. It's your turn now.
That kind of thing. Oh, pearls are back. Is also really good for if you are going to kind of make it up on your own, but you want to, draw something out and have that measurement so that you can do it again. When I get to explaining my overdress, it's all rectangles that have gone into this, and I will talk about that later. But I drew them out on the tracing paper first so that I could make it even, make the same rectangle twice. And then if I want to make it later out of a different color sheet, I know what that measurement is and I don't have to figure it out all over again. But if you are, all right, I'll be very clear. This is maybe intermediate to advanced sewer level. But there's these books. This one is Patterns of Fashion by Janet Arnold, which is such a, if you're a historical costume person, it's great just to have these in your collection. But what they are, and you can get other books that do this too, it doesn't have to be just this one. It kind of goes through and explains, fashion of the period. Does it have every pattern in it? Definitely not. It didn't have the one that I specifically was looking for. But then you get into places where, this is the page I used, I don't know if you can see it. It has a grid, a 1-inch grid, and then you can then map this out. So you can measure it with a ruler and draw it on a piece of paper to make it look like it does there. So it's mostly really good for, it does have measurements in it, so you can copy those if you want to, but you can see the shape that everything is. You can see the shape of a sleeve when it's laying flat on the table as opposed to wrapped around somebody's arm. Because when you're just getting into it, it's not easy to visualize. I can look at your outfit, whether you got that at Marshall's or whether you made it yourself, and deconstruct. I know what that sleeve is going to look like when it lays flat on the table as a single piece of fabric. I know what that's going to look like as I'm cutting it out on the table. But if you don't know that, that's only because I have stared at these pattern pieces so much in my life.
Regency dresses in particular, the cut of the bodices frequently. I don't know if you can see the. I don't think I'm not close enough to the camera for you to see, but the back of this. Let me see if I can. No, I don't have anything. When you cut the pieces, it is absolutely not at all intuitive to figure out how they go together.
I don't know if you can see that. But those are the bodice pieces. They look like weird little ET face-shaped triangles. Who would Who would know this? No one. So it's good to be able to just have that reference and say like, oh, okay, I can make this a rectangle. I don't have to make it as fancy as this, but I know the size it has to be. I can know the approximate placement and shape and things like that. So you can also take patterns, and even if you're not going to cut them out and use them, like some people just can't sew curves together, and that's fine. You can be a person that doesn't have that ability. But you can at least see, oh, okay, this is how it translates to being shaped like a body.
Hooray.
Right.
All right. Show him your dress.
Pattern. Alrighty. So, I have to keep it 100. I know I sound like I have all my stuff together, and in fact, that is not the truth at all. This dress only has one sleeve. I wasn't crazy about how it turned out, and I thought instead of like taking it apart and rushing, it's like, okay, now you can see what it looks like with a sleeve and without a sleeve. These are your options. And I might wind up really liking this sleeve, who knows. But the bottom of this, which really I could have done the same thing with this, just made the bottom portion and then put it over like this top and been good to go with a shrug that I got at Forever 21 in 2005. It's fine. I still have some of those. We don't have to talk about
yeah, just to quickly interject, shrugs are exactly perfect for Regency because they stop stop just under the bust.
And like I can't scroll through Instagram at all anymore without seeing like ads for, targeted ads for 20 something. So I don't know why I'm getting them, but like the like crop top peasant blouse with the puffy sleeve. Oh my god, done. If you had that and a rectangle skirt, you're good. Done. Don't even give a care. But this was, again, just a big rectangle piece of sheet that I put some gathering stitches in, which is also a good thing. In any pattern, it's going to tell you to, like, gather the fabric for fullness, because that was part of the silhouette. It rarely, if ever, just, sometimes you can do it like an A-line, but a rectangle that you can just gather into a waistband or something is also really, really great. And to do that, it's just a basting stitch on a sewing machine. Like, you can do a running stitch by hand, but just, number 4, as long a stitch as you can make it, run a few rows of that, and then you can pull on the bottom thread. And it makes a nice little gather. And that means you can pin it to a straight piece of fabric and then sew that gather down. And now it's going to be the same every time. So like for this, as you can see, there's not as many here, which this is going to be the front, as there are right in the center back. That meant too that I can push all of that to the place that I want it to go. And now it's the same every time. Every time I put the skirt on, I'm going to have to do like, to adjust it and get it so that not all of the gathers are in the front and I look like I'm pregnant. So, there's that. You don't always want that. Also, with all of these silhouettes, be it, Regency or Victorian or Rococo or whatever you're doing, it's usually flat in the front. There's not always a whole lot of volume that's coming right out at you this way. You want to be able to push all that to the back.
I do have to say, as we're talking about this, I actually kind of struggle with Regency. It doesn't look great on me because I have a very large bust. And because everything stops just under the bust line and then just goes straight down, it means that there's a lot
It means that you're not accentuating your smallest...
Exactly. I'm not accentuating the smallest part of me. So it's not super flattering on me, but you know what? Yeah. It's comfy.
It's so fun. Also, I will say that, first of all, it is flattering. You look adorable right now. Second of all, as long as it fits you nicely, and it has nice movement and drape. So, like, this is an old bed sheet. You're never going to find a better drape. Like, it's been washed a million times. It's going to hang really nicely. None of this is, like, sticking out very far. So, like, a nice fabric that has a good hand, meaning that, like, it moves nicely. It falls nicely. It will flatter you. It'll be great.
Avoid, in fact, the fabric that I use for my overdress is kind of stiff. It hasn't been washed over and over and over again, so it's got a little bit of a stiffness. What?
It'll flow.
It will, yeah, it does. It does have some movement, but I in hindsight, I would have used something a little softer.
So this ribbon just broke.
Oh.
Rude. That's okay. Easy fix. But you can see it on this side that it, like, I just put this is a rectangle, and then I cut a little arm, and then this back piece is a rectangle. And then I had put in ribbon just for a drawstring on the top, and then there's just not a drawstring, but one just to tie it closed on the bottom. Yeah, see, this sleeve keeps like falling down and it bothers me. But it's such a nice little puffy sleeve.
I love a puffy sleeve.
So and then this should gather in. But that's it. It's rectangles that now gather at the top and the bottom. There's no dart, there's no curved seam or shaping or any of that. I did not want to waste time on it. I could have, but is it going to make me have a better night? Absolutely not. So again, why, you know, I'm so curiously at 9 in the morning when I'm trying to wear this at 3 in the afternoon. And it does have a split front, which is really helpful for a number of reasons. First of all, it's very period accurate. Second of all, now I have very easy access to that little pocket area. Here we go. So, it's very easy to wear, it's very drapey, it's super comfy because it's just a bunch of rectangles. And the one, like, super structured portion of it is where I did the gathering into a waistband that literally is just, this was the top edge of the sheet. So I didn't have to sew it or anything. It was already there. It was kind of a double layer. And I just sewed it to the gathering. And it was good. And I just measured, like I took a measuring tape and just figured out how long it was. I just cut the hem to that length. So it was good to go. You don't have to put a sleeve on it either. It can just be this.
Erasing.
You know? I know, it's kind of scandalous. You should have a sleeve. But if you're not up for that yet, because I did lie. This is the shape of the sleeve. Since I didn't put the other one on, I can show you. That it is a little more shaped than a rectangle. But I didn't measure it. I knew I wanted it to be full and gathered, so I just cut it really big. And then I don't know if you can see the basting stitch that is running through this, but it's a number 4 basting stitch. It's just like, and then you pull on the thread, and you can push that down and gather it into whatever size you want it to be. And usually, like, you would do more than one row, and it lays nice and flat for when you want to sew it.
Hooray!
Story about me. Oh, and
Okay.
then just like put on 8 million accessories.
Right. Like we said, it's all about the accessories. Also, if anybody has questions, now's the time to start typing them because, like I said, we are on a 20-second delay.
So, and two, this was all, so all of these rectangles I got just by measuring from like here to here, rectangle. You know, here to here, rectangle. I did not use a pattern to cut this out because, again, I kind of already know what those pattern pieces look like when they go on my body. So I had a jumping off point. So tell me about the thing you're wearing that you did use a pattern to cut out.
What do you want to know about it?
I just want to know. I just want you to walk me through your overdress.
So I used this simplicity pattern. In fact, let's take, and like I said, I'm a lazy seamstress, so I cheat a lot. So there were 3 pattern pieces that comprised this top part. Can you see?
You're fine. There you go.
Okay. So the unfortunate thing is that I can't see them. So this one here is the front part. That's this. It's all one piece. I actually added a stitch here just because I sewed this together and didn't fit, like I was rushing it, so I didn't fit it to myself. So once I got it on, my body was a little too big. So I added a stitch in here just to kind of tighten it up a little bit. So the front part is one entire piece. Easy. And then the back, so here's what Steph was saying about how the pieces go together. Nope, I'm showing you the wrong pattern.
But the really great part about a pattern like that is that it comes with that that kind of layout. Like it has it all drawn out for you. Like this is the piece and this is how it's shaped. And this is kind of the way that they piece together. So that as you're cutting them out of fabric,
Okay. Wow.
you kind of get an idea of like, oh, okay, this side and this side meet right here.
I'm going to continue using this piece of fabric, this piece of paper to show you anyway. So pieces 3 and 4 comprise the back of this dress, which doesn't seem super intuitive because let's just look at those again.
Right. So thank God they have it.
How did those go together?
Drawn out there.
Right. So if we look at this, it tells us. And this is what Steph was saying about sewing curves. This particular pattern does have, you have to sew curves. And it is, if you've never done it before, it does maybe take a second to figure it out. So definitely don't use your main fabric the first time round. Practice.
Yeah.
And so in fact, what I did was I used just some scrap fabric that I had to cut this out, figure out how it all went together, sewed it together, and then that became my lining.
Beautiful.
So once I figured out how everything went together, then I cut into my real fabric and sewed the outer portion of it. So definitely don't cut right into your real fabric first time. But then, so those two pieces come together, and then you just sew it right onto that front piece. And you can see how, an interesting thing about this, where my finger is actually where the seam is for where those two pieces come together. So it didn't come together right at the shoulder because it wanted to create, see how this neckline kind of like almost comes up and around my neck? That's why the seam is a little bit further back.
Almost like you could add a nice ruffle and make a fancy collar.
Right, yeah. Ooh,
right there.
Ooh.
Oh, I also want to mention, so like, yeah, that's why patterns are great with showing you like, this is what this piece looks like when it lays flat, and I know that's kind of a weird shape, but trust me, when A plus B equals C and you've done it, it will click in your brain so nicely. But when they also show you not only like how those pieces are supposed to fit together when you're sewing them, but how you can lay them out on the fabric to cut them.
Yes.
So that you, A, use your piece of fabric very economically,
yep.
and B, so that you lay it out on the straight of grain. So for everything that we're doing now with all these rectangles and stuff like that, sorry, I just wanted to
do it
quick because I took a master seamstress class a few years ago, and somebody in that class who was like a fashion student at RISD, honest to God, did not get the concept of the straight of grain. And our teacher was like, okay, so I guess we're going to have to explain.
Back to basics.
So like, it's a thing that a lot of people just don't think about, where, fabric is woven. You have threads that run this way and threads that go this way, the weft and the warp. And so you want to lay your stuff on that grain, because once you go diagonally across that grain, your fabric is going to start moving and shifting. Like if you pull on the cross grain, that diagonal, that's bias. So that's when you start to get all of the nice, like, drapey, 20s and 30s stuff that kind of stretch over your curves, but are really hard to sew, because then as you're sewing, one thing is stretching and the other thing is not, and everything kind of...
You end up with, like, puckering at the seams, and it's all bad.
Yeah. It's all bad. So as tempting as it is to make stuff kind of match in whatever way they go together, it really has to go...
straight up and down.
With that grain, the way they recommend. Just had to interject that. For anyone who feels adventurous enough to start trying to use patterns.
Right. Which, like, honestly, like I said at the beginning, I'm self-taught, so I think Steph cringes a little when she sees some of the things that I do.
It's not that I cringe, I just think it's so funny when somebody, like, I still remember your cousin wearing that beautiful duster that you made her with all of these, like, it had these great, like, ruffles on the sleeve, and it had a great collar, and it was beautiful fabric, and the detail was nice, and it had a beautiful closure. And then the bottom very much was just, like,
no
a pair of scissors with, like, threads hanging off it. And I will be honest. All of this time making this beautiful like collar and shawl and like.
Well,
and then you're
okay.
just like,
So that particular garment, I will tell you, by the time I got to that part of it, I was like, I can't. I've got nothing left in me. I can't.
I understand.
So
that.
I didn't.
That's so fun. But I was just like, you had one more thing to do, and you just were like, no.
No, I had hit my wall with that particular garment. Like it was it. That was the end.
That's okay. And did we have any less of a good day that day?
Right.
No.
Right.
A fabulous day that day.
But so what I was saying was like, don't be afraid to. Oh, did my video freeze?
It did. It sure did.
Oh, okay. I think we're back.
Okay.
I might be about to crash, so if this suddenly ends, thank you for joining us. But what I was going to say was, don't be afraid to, and this is the beauty of using like sheets that you bought at Savers. Don't be afraid to just try it. Buy a pattern, cut into the piece of fabric, play with it, see how it goes. Like that's short of taking a class and actually learning the best way to do it. I am a big fan of trial by fire. Just start doing it and see what happens, especially in something like this. Like we said, you don't have to worry about making it perfectly historically accurate. You're not going to have any less fun of a time. So just try it. Just try it and see what happens. And
I think there are two philosophies that are kind of the same. First of all, don't let perfect be the enemy of the good.
Yes.
That's like Megan Rose thing.
Yes.
But also, what's better than perfect? Done. Just make something that you can wear on your body. And if you're not super in love with it, you've made it. Even if you take a class, you're never gonna get better unless you just
do it.
Start making stuff.
Yep.
So don't be afraid. Love it, live it, laugh it. I just totally went on a brain fart there. But you know what I mean. Just do it. Just dive in, and that's the only way to get the ball rolling.
Or honestly, if you're not comfortable starting completely from scratch, go to Savers, buy a dress, cut it up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
that's something for every level.
Right.
There's no sew, there's beginner sewing, and then there's like you can super advanced draft a historical pattern if you absolutely must. But honestly, unless it's for a project, unless it's for film, why would you bother? Right. Like if it's just for you, just use something that's pretty. Use a color that you like, put on a pair of pearls, and you're gorgeous. You're gorgeous.
You're gorgeous.
And if you really doubt yourself, you call either one of us and we'll be like, oh, look at you, you beautiful thing. You are gorgeous enough on your own.
All right, friends.
So that's it. A lot of really fun rambling.
Yeah,
Thanks
it was. Yeah. Steph and I haven't seen each other in person in a really long time, so
we gotta get it out now. We don't have a lot of opportunities to do this. So
all right.
Witness to all
what? Yeah, thank you. I think that's all we have to say. So I'm going to end the stream. The video will stay up on our YouTube channel. We are going to do this again soon. We don't know when. Soon. And we'll let you know what it's going to be. If you have things that you'd like to see from us, let us know, because we love to talk about anything costume or clothing related. And it doesn't have to be just costume related. If you have actual like fashion questions, we're here for you. We're here for you.
Mm-hmm. Yep, because really, when you get, I used to tell this to my students all the time at URI, like, you're all costume designers. Did you pick out your own clothes this morning when you got dressed? Congratulations, you designed your own costume today. It is literally that basic. So you're already doing it. If you pick out your own clothes day to day, you're already living the life of a fabulous costume designer.
Good job. All right, I'm clicking end stream. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Maybe.
Okay.